Martin. Good evening, everyone, and it's great to be here. I've spoken in a number of venues. I've spoken in halls, I've spoken in community centres. This is the first sauna I've spoken in. I'm not taking off the jacket in case I'm doing a Blair, you know. I brought my PowerPoint presentation as well. I've been working on it very hard. Ian's really laid out what it's about, and you know, it's, at the end of the day, it's going to be arithmetic, but it's going to be arithmetic, and I'm going to bore you with a little bit of arithmetic for a wee minute. The academics are off rewriting the history books about what could and couldn't happen under the different system with the Scottish Parliament. It broke all the records. That was 40% for one party. Now, we do have a majority of MSPs in the Parliament who support independence, but this is bigger than one party. This has to be a movement. It has to be people of other parties, no party. It has to be everyone, and I'm delighted to see the range of folk that are here tonight. This isn't about politicians either, it's about opportunities. It's a word Ian used very early on in his presentation, and that's key to everything. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for change. If you're going to change, you need to think what the status quo is. And it is for the proponents of the status quo to actually sell it, and I think they'll have a particularly difficult job doing that for a number of reasons. The British state's a pernicious state in my view. It's a state that deals with elites, and the elites are the bankers, the elites are the generals, the elites are the arms dealers, the multinationals. They're not the good folk of Nairn, they're the good folk of the Highlands. And their interests will always be served, so whether that's with illegal wars, people of Scotland demonstrated against what was an illegal war, we went to war. The very same folk ill-equipped our troops when they were out there, they made our people vulnerable. So this is not a state that has much to commend it in my book. And of course that was about oil, and I don't think oil has featured too much in this campaign, nor should it. I'm sure Donnie will have a few things to say about oil, and I think from memory I've got a couple of things further on. But this is primarily about opportunity, and it's an opportunity I hope that we'll all seize. Because along with that elites, you have a situation where privilege is a key element of the UK, the British state. It's a government with 23 millionaires. Now, I have nothing against wealth creation, but the UK is one of the most unequal countries in the developed world. And if anything, we must change that. So what I would like to do is focus on three areas that are presently dealt with by the Scottish Parliament, and perhaps contrast them with what happens in the UK. So, health is devolved. And I'm absolutely delighted that there is broad consensus, and there is. I mean, there's, despite all the rhetoric and the very unfortunate half hour every week, which is a big theatrical bun fight and bears no relation to the very collective and work that goes on in the committees, there's a social democratic consensus in Scotland, and that manifests itself in the approach that's taken with regard to health. So we have free prescriptions. I'm delighted we have free prescriptions. There were I need to check this figure here. There were 660,000 people in receipt of less than £16,000 a year who were paying for prescriptions. Now that is not the way. The idea that some pharmacists were having people coming up with a prescription that said 5 things and they're saying to the pharmacist, which 2 should I have because they can't afford it. That's shocking. That's ended. Free personal care, that's brought dignity to our older people and not had them worry, and indeed families worry about what will happen to them after that. Now I contrast that with the opportunity taken by every one of the unionist parties, every single one of them, starting with the foundation hospitals by the previous UK administration, to ensure that private money has every opportunity to permeate into the health service. That won't happen in Scotland. I think there's a consensus. And you may say, well, what's that to do with independence referendum? Well, the reality is that the more public money, the more private money that goes into the public health service in England, and elements of England and Wales, then that has consequences for the Barnett consequentials. There's less money coming in. Now, you already have health trusts that are run by multinational companies where there is no scrutiny. Freedom of information will not gain you access to minutes. Now, so I would contrast that. I would also contrast the situation with education, where we have record numbers going. The First Minister said, and I can't do any better than repeat it, that free education is the birthright of every Scot. And that contrasts markedly with the situation south of the border. The tuition fees, the situation where the educational maintenance allowance Yes, there's challenges around colleges, and I'm delighted that John Swinney last week found additional money. I have to say, you can't please some folk. We found additional money for that. But again, I would contrast that with the £1 billion plus that's being removed south of the border for public education, and the record levels of funding that there is for higher education in Scotland. So we're building colleges, and by we I mean the Scottish Parliament is building colleges in Kilmarnock, Glasgow and Inverness. By contrast, the UK government is wanting to build private prisons. So I think there again shows you where the capital is going. And as I say, the unionists are all the same. There's been, I think, an interesting opportunity thrown up by the Labour leader in Scotland, and that is around the discussions about universalism, the provision of facilities regardless of someone's ability to pay. And I think I would like the argument to pick up on this is because there's a finite budget in Scotland. If we had some latitude to do other things with our budget, good grief, Orkney Council can borrow money, Clackmannan Council can borrow money, the Scottish Government can't borrow money. Now, that is to change, I acknowledge that's to change, but again, that's more cake tomorrow. So, universalism is funded out of the 3% savings that came from local government last year. Excuse me. Now, there's an awful lot of nonsense talked about buses. I don't use buses a lot, I use trains a lot. I don't use buses a lot, but on the occasions when I do use buses, I've never found difficulty getting a seat because it's full of millionaires. So the nonsense that free provision and the fact that over 1 million older people and disabled people have opportunities to travel, which is an important social thing, and actually has created opportunities, whether it's the older couple going a distance during the winter to go and stay in a BB somewhere else because they've got the money to do that because they don't have to pay the fare. I think there are clear examples where that contrasts with some issues south of the border there. And I think there are opportunities, and this is where I think we need to have open discussions, because if the one vision of Scotland is one party's vision, and that never was the case. I mean, even the unionist parties will say they have a vision for Scotland, but there are opportunities to discuss things. And so, for instance, there will be opportunities in independent Scotland to say, if we've a perfectly correctly functioning rail network that goes from Inverness to London, and it is in public ownership, are there opportunities to consider taking other strands of the rail network into public ownership? That would be my personal option, Surprise, not a few folk I wouldn't run that. Also in relation to buses, there's interesting discussion coming up there about buses. These are opportunities that we're going to have, you could say, because we've got a devolved assembly, devolved parliament, beg your pardon. But the contrast there, the focus in Scotland is different from the profit making, because whether it's the obligation of the National Health Service, the statutory obligation of a council with regard to care, is to service that need, to assess the need and service it. The statutory obligation of a multinational company in the health service is to maximise profits for its shareholders. So I think that just that very, very significant difference shows the emphasis there. Now, justice, I'm a former police officer. There are record numbers of police officers, 17,234. That brings challenges, because if you have all these numbers, you don't have the flexibility, and that creates some issues. We're moving to a single police service. That single police service is going to be hampered to the extent, along with the fire service, of £25 million a year. That's different from the police service in Northern Ireland, which is a unitary service, and it's different from the academy schools in England, because of course the present administration changed arrangements in conjunction with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs to make sure that they were VAT exempt. So straight away we have a £25 million penalty on an annual basis on the back of that. And I mention record numbers because that's produced one thing, that's produced a 37-year low in crime rates, low levels of re-offending, and again that contrasts with the thousands of jobs that have been police officer jobs as we shed south of the border. A drop of £4,000 in the starting salary of constables, and an opportunity taken at every turn to try and bring the public sector, the private sector, into policing functions. Now, the Cabinet Secretary for Justice of Scotland, Kenny McCaskill, said there will be no privatisation. Again, the Barnett consequentials always haunt us, because as long as we are dealing with a handout, and that's how it's seen, that's how it's paraphrased, then I think that we're going to have difficulties. So what is it we're wanting? I think most people in Scotland want to see some social justice, and that doesn't mean that I don't care about the well-being of people in Newcastle, Newquay, Nuremberg, wherever. But the difference is we have an opportunity to do something, and this is the opportunity that we have. I think another opportunity needs to be grasped, and it's not presently being grasped, and that's the opportunity to discuss what the implications of having a constitution are. Now, the First Minister's touched on this. There's been some very brief discussion about it, and I think he said whether there would be a right to a house, for instance. Clearly there's a right to free education. There's an opportunity to embed into our constitution many of the human rights that have in part been signed up to, but Mr Cameron would like to cast aside, I have to tell you. There's an opportunity to look at the situation in Iceland and the excitement that was generated there by discussions around a constitution. Or Mexico, where they have in their constitution that it is illegal to wage an act of a war of aggression. So I'd like to see that considered. There's a number of opportunities to consider different versions of things. I know one view is that we should encourage multinational companies to come in by a reduction in corporation tax. That's not something I would personally favour. I would favour more along the lines that we have at the moment of small business bonus. I think that has good grief in the present climate. We know how bad high streets are, the length and breadth of the country. What they would be like without the small business bonus, I don't know. But we must encourage small business, and we must encourage local, and I don't think Donnie would disagree with that. What's most important with every issue that we deal with is to be very clear who supports something and why do they support it. I support, yes, I've always been a nationalist since I was at Aladdin, and I don't support it because I think we might be better off. I don't support it. I maybe one time thought flags were awfully important. I don't think they're terribly important now. What I think is important now is social justice. And I think that when we have the OECD, I always get mixed up whether that's actually a medical condition or one of the economic bodies tells us that we would be 6th wealthiest country in the world and the rest of the UK would be 16th. Well, that's interesting, but to me it's interesting more about what we can do with that wealth, because you know Scotland is rich in resources, and I'm not going to rehearse the wind, the wave and all the other energies, the Saudi Arabia of the north, but these are the important things for the future. There is also a huge volume, we're halfway through the oil. There are opportunities around that. There are opportunities that must be taken in conjunction with reducing our consumption, I accept. But we have exciting times with the NIG, with Kishon, with Ardesir along the road there, and the opportunity with the renewables to get things going. So what would affect that? The significant assets we have in the North Sea, I'm told here, 54 billion in the next 6 years. What could you do with that? Well, with 54 billion, you could probably get about 1.5 Trident systems. We could almost get 2, I'm very unfair on them. There's 1.4 billion spent already in the early design work of Trident. No decision to be taken to 2016. Again, all the unionist parties the same on this. Lib Dems doing their usual. I read local MP's version in one of the papers recently, and I'm none the wiser whether for, again, indifferent, anti, whatever. But what we do know is that 1.4 billion spent already, replacement 25 to 30 billion, and 3 billion a year running costs. Now, if you do your 10% of that, what a difference we could make with that. So I think there is an opportunity to rid ourselves of nuclear weapons. Now, that's not going to happen with the UK. And people will understand my personal view is it's more challenging if we're if we remain part of NATO. I accept that there's a different view of that. Again, importantly, we have discussions around these issues. Welfare reform. Welfare reform has been touched on. Someone sat in an office in Westminster, and I think it's very important that public money is all properly accounted for. Someone sat in an office and said, we need to look at this. And I'm very keen that assessed need is made. We assess someone's needs and we say, this is what we do. It's a fundamental principle Colin and others will be familiar with from social work and health practice. What someone said is we're going to save 25%. That's the starting off point. And thereafter, if you take something that's now been referred to as the bedroom tax, someone sat down and said, only if the carer stays overnight. only if the equipment's of a certain dimension to be stored in a room. No consideration for lone parents who have custody arrangements for children. That's the level of callousness that's been attached to this. The ridiculous stories that almost sound off the Richter scale as regards ridiculousness. Last week, someone with the 2 club feet, a metal plate in their head, using crutches, artists had them no visible sign of mobility issues. Now, previous week, someone in a secure mental ward deemed fit to work. This is a situation that I cannot see, regardless of how post-2016 a Scottish government would be. And the likelihood is it certainly was a blip in 2011, a welcome blip, I have to say personally. The likelihood of any sort of coalition arrangement was I cannot see these punitive and callous approaches being adopted. So we need control. We need control of our pensions. We need control of our welfare systems. I met a woman recently and I said to her, "How's her husband?" And she said, "Oh, he's been refused again." And I said, "Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. I previously had dealings with him." But she says, "Don't worry, it's okay. He'll be admitted to hospital. I'll be on my depression tablets again, and he won't get it back. But we'll have to go through this routine." Now that level of callousness is just absolutely unacceptable. And I say, regardless of the format of any future Scottish Government, I cannot see that happening. When there is an incentive, when at his own headquarters, I understand one of their entrants wasn't DDA compliant, when there is the imperative to make profit, and that profit isn't sufficient in itself, because bear in mind that if you make 9 million this year and you make 8 million the following year, that's deemed to be a failure. Share price goes down and all this. So I think there are flaws that need to be addressed. One of these flaws is, of course, tax evasion and avoidance. So they have one of the reasons why I personally wouldn't support corporation tax. Others would. I heard the First Minister say at the Jimmy Reid lecture, which was a tremendously well attended event, hundreds of folk, and his speech was printed, very well received by a cross-section of folk across the parties, because as Ian said, and the slide isn't up anymore, the really telling latest involvement of Labour Party members, Labour for India, if people follow on Facebook and Twitter, and as of last week, Lib Dems for India. Yeah. Now, isn't that exciting? And I don't normally get excited by anything to do with the Lib Dems, because it has to be that broadcast. I think we're a wee bit off from Tories for Independence, but why not? Why not? You know, in many respects, Scotland's a very socially conservative country. You know, why not? Why not? Maybe that's where Murdo was going. Maybe that's where Murdo was going, and they didn't like it. So I don't think we should reward the Tesco's and the Amazons of this world by giving them any incentive. But equally, we need, if you're having social justice, you need tax justice. And John Swinney very cleverly is putting the mechanisms in place to have a tax system dealt with. And I think it's very important there are some regulations. I won't be too much longer. I'm going to tell you that the 100 billionaires in the world, if they're all capable, if their money, income, not their assets, their income is capable of sorting world poverty 4 times over. And the richest 1% increased their income by 60% in recent times. Now, I think Scotland has the opportunity to be different, and I really do. I think with the opportunity to look on things that what inhibits people working nursery hours, greater nursery provision, is a thing that I get told all the time. There's been an extension of the hours, as you know, and that has to be welcomed. There are challenges that are being particularly targeted at looked after children and vulnerable children, age 2. There's more hours for 3 and 4. Respite care. Now, 10% of the cost of Trident going to respite care. The unpaid work done by carers would bankrupt any country. They need to be rewarded. They need to be rewarded by genuine. Free school meals, transport, these are things that could be discussed. I was involved in a planning debate. Now, it sounds a very dry subject, but planning actually is quite interesting, because you get the opportunity to look at the broader picture of things. And it did strike me that people had all sorts of interesting contributions to make, but many of these things were beyond beyond the control of the government. You know, the energy industry is an extremely powerful lobby. The retail industries have an extremely powerful lobby, you know. Asda do very, very well, and I don't mean retailing handguns in the US as Walmart, because they are the biggest supplier of handguns, to understand. But they'll get every basket of fruit they hand into a school, they'll get a picture in the paper doing it, you know. I think we need to, if we're going to have social justice, we need a just taxation system to reward it, and I think there are opportunities for that. I'm getting near the end now, you were delighted to hear. And I'm going to quote a US president, and it's, again, Lib Dems and US presidents in the same, right, that's something else. Roosevelt said, political equality we once had won was meaningless in the face of economic inequality. Now there's a huge inequality. Bashir Ahmed, the late MSP who came from Pakistan and got such a warm welcome in Scotland, and a very honourable man, and I think Scotland is the richer for people from the Indian subcontinent, or late from the Eastern Europe, or Irish and Italian people. And he said, it's not where we're from, it's where we're going together. And I think there is an opportunity here for a fairer, more socially just Scotland. I hope that you will join in that opportunity to make a fairer, just Scotland and support the Yes campaign. Thank you.
Follow that, that's it. Thank you, John. And I think what I'll do is I'll just take a bit of the Lib Dems book and say, I agree with John. John, when are you going to join the Green Party? That's some of the stuff that you said. Anyway, tonight I've come to speak to you as a member of the Green Party. I'm a great supporter of independence, I always have been anyway. But even if I wasn't, because I'm a member of the Green Party, I would be supporting independence. And along with every other Green Party in the world, we think, why do the Greens support independence for Scotland? The reason is we need to look at what Green stands for. I mean, Green itself, it's a misused word. Every politician you hear say we have a green agenda. We're green, or we're greener than you, or we're greener than you, or we're greener than whoever. But you need to understand what the Scottish Green Party is. The Scottish Green Party is based in Scotland, and it's independent of any other Green Party. And along with its partner, not partner, but another, so the nearest one, is the Green Party of England and Wales, which is a nice lot of people down there, but really we run a little show up here. And then the Green Party of England and Wales and the Green Party of Scotland are part of the European Greens. So we have a lot of Green parties in all the different countries in Europe. And the European Greens are part of the global Green movement. And the global Green movement itself represents parties in maybe about 200 countries around the world. It's the biggest political movement in the world, and it's the fastest growing political movement in the world. So why do we support independence for Scotland? You have to look first of all at the 5 pillars that all the Green parties in the world agree upon. There is 5 principles that it's been agreed that this is what every Green party will live by. And I've actually got a slide now that shows it, because you actually put them up. And the first one is social justice. That's the 5 of them. And that is what all Green parties stand for. Social justice, John spoke about it a lot there, that inequality is a scourge on society. The gap between the rich and poor in this country is an absolute disgrace for a modern civilization. And there was somebody said a long time ago that you could judge a society by how it treats its kids and how it treats its elderly. And I think that because we're dictated to by London, that I don't think Scots people would in any way be proud of how they treat the kids and the elderly in this country. So if we want social justice, we want independence. Ecological wisdom, the second one on there. John quoted the American president. I'll quote somebody better. Which is an old Cree chieftain. One of the proverbs from the Crees was, only when the last tree has died, and the last river polluted, and the last fish have been caught, will we realize that we can't eat money. The Crees knew that. That was in ecological wisdom. And if any of you have seen a film called The Age of Stupid, there was a film made about it, The Age of Stupid, where it was all about this last person living on Earth, in the way in the future. And they called this time, round about now, round about this time, they called it, that was the Age of Stupid. Because people had the wisdom. They knew what was wrong. They knew what they were doing to the planet. They actually knew that they were creating this thing for their children and their grandchildren, and yet they did it. So they called it the Age of Stupid. So ecological wisdom is one of the things the Green parties have to live by. The third thing, peace and non-violence. First of all, ecological wisdom itself. I don't think that London, the power that is down in London, from run by this corporate, the corporate power of the arms companies and the dealers and all that, then can never give us the ecological wisdom that Scotland has. Scotland will actually look after the planet better on its own. Peace and non-violence, John said it there as well. Surely in the 21st century that we have come to be more civilized, that we can sort out problems without dropping bombs and things and making money for arms companies and things like that. So we should have come past that by now in the evolution of mankind. Four is sustainable economics. This, in a world where you have finite resources, you cannot continue with economic policies of infinite growth. And that is what the city in the southeast of London are putting on us. But then the most important of all is the principle that means that every Green party in the world supports independence for Scotland, is that one of the pillars of the Green movement is grassroots democracy. And grassroots democracy is a special definition to it. It is a political system where as much decision-making authority as practical is shifted to the lowest geographical level of organisation using the principle of subsidiarity. And subsidiarity is a beautiful word, and I even learned how to pronounce it properly. But it is what the European Union was originally founded on. It's been lost a lot since it was founded, but it was there to begin with. And it's an organising principle that says that decisions should always be taken at the smallest, lowest, or least centralised level capable of addressing the matter effectively. It's the closest to where that decision will have an effect, and that almost defines what we mean by Scottish independence. But I can think of no matter that is better decided in Westminster than in Scotland, or if it involves more than one country at Europe, or higher at the United Nations, so that you're devolving it down. So the Westminster government to me is a waste of money, and to all Green parties it's a waste of money. And it is well known and understood in political circles that societies based on this principle of subsidiarity of the lowest level there are characterized by rich and varied social order rather than the disenfranchised individuals on one hand and the enormous power of the state on the other. It encourages the assumption of widespread responsibility and active engaged citizenship, and that's what we want in Scotland. And it's not just the Scottish Green Party, therefore, that supports independence for Scotland and the Green people in there, it's the Green parties all over the world. And I would like to welcome tonight here, we have somebody from Catalonia, and I would love to see them getting independence. Well, welcome to you here. And next to him we have somebody from the Basque country. And so the Green Party will support you as well.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming along, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.